In our last class, we learned about how to draw inspiration using the pearl. And the example I gave was one where we went into meditation and basically we all focused together and you were able to see the pearl. You were able to engage with the pearl. But now, today, I think what we're going to think about further is how you use it, because several questions have come up on how we use the pearl. One question was, can we consider the pearl to be the higher being that I believe in, and communicating with the higher being and asking the counsel from that being regarding my decision making? And the answer is absolutely yes, because the pearl is a symbol that connects you to your higher self. Imagine we have lived all our lives making decisions by ourselves. How often do we stop and say, you know what, I'm going to seek counsel from a higher level? We don't. And as a result, we take on so much pressure with respect to our decisions. So now, when you're practicing with the pearl, you're actually asking your question to that higher being, that this is my predicament, this is my issue, how do I deal with it? And then the answer comes. Now, how does the answer come? Once you've placed the question, then you go around with your day-to-day activity, stop thinking about the issue, until after a period of time you come back whenever you're ready, you close your eyes and you ask. Sometimes you will get an answer immediately. Sometimes you will see visions, but you will understand those visions. They will come to you in a way where they will make sense. Sometimes nothing will come, but a day later someone is going to say something to you which you go, wow, that's my answer. You will be conscious of the answer coming to you, but there's no fixed way of how it comes. There's another question was, at present we are debating upon the decision of which university my son would go. If I don't get an answer, can I get some suggestion? Again, the same thing. Go into that space of oneness. Look at the pearl in all humility and sincerity and ask for guidance. And the answer will come. Now, very fortunately, Arif Ismail, who has been practicing the use of the pearl for the last 10 years, very kindly offered to record his experiences, the questions he asked, how the answers came, and how he has been able to benefit from it. So he was very kind to do the recording. We have that video clip, which is combined with just the meditation of the pearl, and we will mail out the link tomorrow to everybody on the list of those who have registered in today's conference and all previous webinars. So you will get that link. The first 10 minutes is the meditation itself of the pearl and my explaining it. And then the next 10 minutes is Arif sharing his experience in a short interview with Tosin. So I do highly recommend you watch it, because it'll help you understand how to make the most of the pearl. So we then move on. In our last class, we also learned about oneness and recognizing our source on a 24/7 basis, 24 hours a day. So we live in oneness. We should constantly be aware of it, and we should be seeking the presence of our source in everything we do. I also explained why knowledge is light, and I gave you many examples of how simple things, when you go deeper into the process, ultimately result to the conclusion that there is a greater source beyond us. And that's how knowledge becomes light, is that continuous recognition. So search for the source is not limited to just meditation time. It's a continuous process. And then in our previous classes, we have covered the first level in meditation, which is stillness, and we have covered it in great detail. We've covered clarity in great detail. And last class, we did oneness, which is where your material and spiritual being unite. And this is the highest level of your intellect. So once we have perfected the techniques up to oneness, it opens the door to linkage, which is today's topic, and hopefully the next one or maximum 2 classes. Now, so far, all the techniques that we have learned teach us to engage with the material level present as fully as possible. So when you work with stillness, when you work with your anchor thought, anchoring yourself in the present with a particular state of being that you choose, living in compartments and staying focused in your compartments, detachment, letting go of the past, the future, the world, letting go of fear, living in oneness, and making inspired decisions by using the pearl, drawing upon your higher self. These are all techniques we have learned up to now. And these techniques bring us squarely into the material level present. And this is where our greatest potential resides. So these are all available in the recordings, and I do urge you to go and keep listening to them and practicing them. But they prepare you for what we are going to do today. Because up to now, we've reached the material level present fully. And this level has a great deal of power. Now, let me share an example with you of how actually time slows down when you are totally present. Many, many years ago, I was visiting Portugal, and there was a lady I was helping who was suffering from terminal cancer. And I visited her, I sat with her, meditated with her. There was no more medical intervention available to help her. So we meditated together, and I helped her as much as I could draw out that strength within herself to be able to ease her pain and seek healing. Now, while I was in town, somehow word got around that I was there. And so the next morning in the hotel lobby, there were almost 40 people, all who wanted to see me. And of course, we didn't have any appointments with anyone. I had different plans that morning. And I had about 3 hours or 3.5 hours before which I had to leave for the airport to fly back home. So the person who had organized my visit, he said to me, I think we should send them all home because there's no appointment, there's no time, there's no schedule. And I said, no. I said, if they have come here, then they've come to seek help, then we must serve them. It's a sign to us that we have to help them in any way we can. So I changed my schedule. But he said there's 40 people. How are we going to meet with 40 people individually and do the meditations with them? And I said, let's start and let's see how many we get through. And by the time 3 hours were done, we had sat with 40 people and helped each one of them in whatever way I could. And when we finished, we were driving to the airport, and the organizer was saying to me, he said, you have to explain something to me. I said, what is that? He said, I was sitting in that room with you. Each person came, and it was like they were the only people you were meeting all day. You didn't rush anybody. You took your time. And how did we finish 15 people every hour? It's impossible. He said, this was a very long session, but why is it only 3 hours? And I said, well, how many minutes do you think there are in an hour? And he said, 60. I said, that's where you're wrong. Because when you engage totally with the present, when they walked into the room, they were my whole and soul focus. I was there to serve them and to help them. And nothing mattered. There was not a single thought in my mind about anything but that purpose. And with that, time slows down. It's amazing how much you can fit in time when you're completely present. And so in today's class, we are going to learn a bit more about how that works, because I'm hoping that you will all be able to do that. Now, all the techniques I've shared with you up to now actually help you to slow your own time down, to live far more in every minute. And hopefully, as you get better and better in it, you're going to see that, even if you may live a life of another 20 years, it'll be like living another 50 or 60 years because you are living fully. Now, this is the material level present, where time stands, it slows down. But now today we are talking about moving from the material level present to the spiritual level present. And this is where we are ready for time to stand still. Remember, your higher self is completely still. You now want to engage completely with your higher self. In the spiritual level present, your material consciousness is gone because it knows no time. In the spiritual present, it doesn't know any time. It is completely still. Let me give you an example of how the spiritual present can be perceived. You've all come across, the way movies used to be made before the digital age, and there used to be those reels. And let's say that there's a film of a man moving his hand. So he's moving his hand like this. Now that, if you took that reel and watched the way his hand moved, you're going to see maybe 100 little frames of the position of that hand. Now, if you're in the material level, that reel moves and you see the movement. But in the spiritual level, you freeze into one frame. Everything stops. So at the material level, when you're looking at the movie, there's maybe 100 little presents as the hand is going down. And how long is the present? Present is a very fine line that exists between past and future, but very, very short. But when you come into the spiritual present, that hand stops moving. It's timeless. It's gone to zero. The reel has stopped. It's like that whirling cyclone has just collapsed. It has stopped spinning. And all that is left is its core, which is completely still. And when you reach the spiritual level present, time has stopped. Everything stops. You stop. And that is where you engage with linkage, in the absence of time. Because what you're seeking, where you wish to be, is timeless. So now, having learned so much about getting fully into the material present, we now want to practice going into spiritual present, where it's timeless. Everything has stopped. Now, let's talk about linkage, because linkage starts at that point. Linkage is governed very largely by power of thought. And we'll come to the word, but before that, I must quickly go over the fact that thought has life. Each time you think, you give off seeds. These seeds go and germinate in the minds of others, near you, far away. Events are created, life happens because of your thoughts. And thoughts are so powerful that they can shape your life. I'll give you one quick example. When I was 16 and I was growing up in Kenya, we had a cholera epidemic. And I remember how little children would be so healthy and plump, and a few days later, they were a skeleton, totally thin, like nothing left, totally dehydrated. And I remember at that age thinking to myself, one day in my life, I'm going to do something about it. Now, think of a 16-year-old who thinks that one day in my life, I'm going to bring an end to water-carried disease. And I thought it, And then I moved on with life. Went to the UK for my education, had all my life full of friends, girlfriends, entertainment. I forgot that thought completely. But I wanted to do medicine. I wanted to be a neurosurgeon. That was my dream. But every medical school I applied to, I couldn't get in. And when I was talking to my mom over the phone, and I said, I don't know, I'm doing everything right, I've got good grades, but this door is just not opening. And she said, keep trying, but the right door will open for you where you will fulfill your purpose. Didn't make much sense to me. And my brother, who was in engineering school at the time, sent out an application on my behalf for chemical engineering. Next thing I know, I got an interview. And I go to Birmingham, and at the end of the interview, they make me an unconditional offer to say, if you take this offer, withdraw from your medical career or applications, then this place is guaranteed. And I thought, bird in hand is better than two in the bush. I've tried so hard, I can't get into medical school. And, during clearing, maybe I will, maybe I won't. Let me take this. I had no idea why I did that, because I had not done mathematics at A levels. And chemical engineering is pure mathematics. The word chemical is misleading. So I went ahead and I excelled. And, the year I graduated, I got first-class honors in chemical engineering. And that's when the senior tutor who gave me the offer said to me that you were actually a guinea pig. Because we used to have a debate of should we exclude students who do not have mathematics at A level. And so you are a guinea pig for us to see how you would fare amongst other students. And he said, you came out on top of the class. So it tells us that, yes, your subjects are important, but they're not showstoppers. And then my life took me in the direction of working with water. Many years later, I was in Vietnam, and we were working in a place called Lang Son, which is along the river. Now, Vietnam people live in communes. So there's one commune that takes water from the river, people drink, and they put the sewage back in that river. Another 2 miles down the road, the next community drinks water. So children were dying like fleas. Infant mortality was very high. This is in the early 90s when there was a US embargo against Vietnam. We put in a system and we started a system. And I remember all this community, there were about 10,000 people in that little town. There was a whole bunch of people gathered near the water system, and they were filling their glasses with water, they were filling their containers, they were dancing. And I said to the mayor, why are they doing this? And he said, for years we have prayed that someday someone is going to come and make us or give us clean water to drink and bathe in, not water that's the color of your coffee. And he said, today it has happened. And just then it hit me like I had goosebumps. I froze. And I went back to the age 16 and I said, oh my God, it has happened. That thought was so powerful. It shaped my life. A year later, I was there with Karima, and people were holding our hands and pulling us into their homes with so much pride to show us a tap. We all go and open our water and have our showers and take it for granted. But just that one tap with clean water transformed that community. But it started with that one very powerful thought, and I didn't even know how powerful it was. But it shaped my life. The reason I share this example with you is now think in linkage. You have amazing power of thought that you can put to work as you focus on the word. And we're going to learn a little more about that. So always remember, you've been blessed with power of thought, and now is the time for us to learn how to use it to go higher and higher in our spiritual journey. So what is linkage? Each one of us has a connection with our source. It's like an umbilical cord between a mother and child. And of course, umbilical cord is linear, but linkage is dimensionless. It's infinite. But the principle is the same. There is a connection. And linkage, as you practice meditation with your word at the level of linkage, that umbilical cord gets shorter and shorter and shorter. While you focus on that word, it has infinite energy, that word, and it brings you closer and closer and closer. Why does it have infinite energy? Because that word is the name of your source. Now, let's ask ourselves, why is it a word? It is a word because word engages with thought. So when you have a word you fully believe in, and you know that is my creator, then that engages the thought of your creator. That is why it is a word. That is why universally meditation revolves around the use of a word. And so it is like a linkage thought. In meditation, it's a thought that underlies the word. And since the thought is about your source, we call it the source thought. Now, how do you frame that thought? You cannot visualize or imagine what you're seeking for, because what you're seeking is beyond your imagination. So, through that linkage thought, and the word that represents your thought, your source, you frame your thinking. And we're going to learn a bit more about how to frame our thinking. Now, from a religious point of view, when I say the word God, what thought does it invoke in you? Or Allah, or Krishna, or Om. They all invoke in us the source thought, because we all, depending on our beliefs, believe that that is our source. So that word invokes in us the source thought, which is the key. The word and the source thought go together in your meditation. And that's how linkage works. Now, if we do it from a non-religious point of view, when I say universe, or origin, or nature, or life, or unity, or oneness, what does that invoke in you? If you believe that your source is the universe, it's going to invoke a thought of your source. So that's the source thought. So you choose your word that you believe in 1000% to be your source. And then that word has energy, tremendous amount of energy, and it engages with that thought because that is the meaning now of the word, and you move forward in your meditation with that. Now, in many schools of thought, in many faiths of, sometimes you are given this word, and its meaning, by your master, your teacher, your guru. You're given a mantra. So if you're given this word, fantastic. You already got something to work with. You are given the meaning. Fantastic. So now you've got the meaning and you've got the word. If you haven't been given it, you choose whatever it is you believe, you choose your word and you understand its meaning. But how we get here doesn't matter. You have the word and you have the meaning. How do we work with it? Now, we have to learn to refine the engagement of the word with the source thought. Because these words invoke in each one of us, they invoke us in different ways. So there is a phase I call the source contemplation. I practice that. And it's usually before I start my meditation. Because this source contemplation is as important as the meditation itself. And what happens during this source contemplation? I sit very quietly and I frame my source thought with the same energy or intelligence as my linkage word. So I engage into the meaning of the word. I start thinking and contemplating about my source. This is source contemplation. Now, this process of framing this contemplation is very personal. But let me share some examples with you to consider. So, for example, let us explore deep within the attribute or attributes of our source that impact us the most. Here are some examples, and these are as reflected in many scriptures as well as universal schools of thought. And when I talk about scriptures, all scriptures, no matter where you look, carry the same message. And I heard a very enlightening discourse earlier this week. Someone forwarded it to me of a gentleman in India who talked about the essence of every faith being like a toffee. It's the same toffee, but they are wrapped in different color wrappers. So you've got the blue wrapper, you've got the red wrapper, you've got the green wrapper. These are your different religions. And yet some people say it must be the red wrapper. And the other ones go, no, it must be the green wrapper. And everybody fights over wrappers. But the toffee is the same. So when I talk about scriptures, I'm going down to the toffee. Doesn't matter which color wrapper it is. And if we're not talking scriptures and we're talking just universal thinking, then again, we're going down to the same toffee. So let's take some examples. One source thought is the creator is oneness. So that means there is only one creator and all paths of search lead to this one creator. Now remember, last week we talked about living in oneness. We talked about living in the being of the creator. If you listen to that class video or audio and refresh yourself on the whole concept of oneness and living in it, then that contemplation in that area is shaping your source thought towards the word oneness. How everything comes together as one. So when you're sitting and contemplating before your meditation, saying, let me think about my source, my creator. My creator is oneness. Then you think about thousands of droplets of water falling in the rain, suddenly stopping and all coming together into one beautiful crystal clear droplet. It's a unifying process. Contemplate that unifying process while you're sitting, because this is your time to understand how you're going to engage your linkage, what your linkage word is. This is your time to prepare. So if oneness happens to be your choice, then contemplating this way frames your thought, your source thought, beautifully. And when you slowly repeat that word, oneness, in your linkage, for example, the understanding that you have created during this contemplation underlies the word. So when you're saying the word, you're not, or when you're hearing it in your mind, you're not hearing it in vacuum. There's an understanding, there's a meaning that accompanies it. Another source thought. The creator is the origin, the source of everything. So he's your source, and you are from him. If you trace your mind back, now during your contemplation, you sit back and say, what does this mean? I'm giving you how I think, but you can all have your own ways of framing your thoughts. I'm just sharing what I do and how it works for me. So if you're sitting quietly before your meditation and you are now trying to contemplate that the creator is the origin or source, you sit back and cast your mind back. Today, let's say you're 50 years old. You cast your mind back to 40, 30, 20, 10, and play back your life slowly and come back to your earliest memory. I know that my earliest memory in some cases goes back to 2. And then there is a whole bunch of voids, but it goes back to a particular point when I was 2, when I know that before that, I don't know what happened. Now, when you contemplate backwards, you come to a point where your memories stop, but you continue. So when you're contemplating, okay, so prior to that, I was in my mother's womb. What was it? What happened? Think about yourself. What was I prior to that? And that is how you're moving back in contemplation towards your origin. Or another way to approach it is to imagine that your source, your creator, is there, and you are like a tree, and your roots are in your creator. You are in your creator. Now start tracing back those roots. Go down the route until you reach a point where you are at your source. You're working backwards to your source. So this is another way to frame your source thought towards the origin. Then another source thought is your creator is ever continuous. No beginning, no end. So therefore your creator is timeless. You are timeless. And in the spiritual present, that is where you seek your creator, in timelessness. So contemplate timelessness. Something that does not begin nor end. What would it be like? What is it? The power lies in the question. You don't have to have the answer right away, but that question embeds itself in your soul, in your heart, in your mind, and then an understanding emerges. And to that, you engage your linkage word. Now it's complete. So you think of the earth rotating constantly around its axis. It never stops. It never starts. It is just continuous. So is your creator. So think about the continuity of your creator. And if your linkage word is ever continuous, eternal, timeless, then this contemplation frames your source thought beautifully. Another one is your creator is infinite. But you only know 3 dimensions, length, width, and height. So it's impossible for you to imagine what is infinite. So don't try to imagine. Instead, contemplate that which is beyond your imagination, that which is so vast that can fit universes after universes. Think of the vastness of the infinite. It's a beautiful thought, and your source is that. So if your linkage word is infinite, infinity, or even universe, this way of thinking frames your thinking perfectly with your source thought. So much so that when you start thinking of that universes after universes fitting in, there's a deep desire in you, a hunger to want to know him. So that's how you frame your source thought before you meditate. Another one is the creator is life. All the life energy that flows through us and everything that we see and that which we don't is our creator. So you contemplate the depth of the word life. What does life truly mean? You know what life energy does because it manifests all around you in this world, but it is unseen. Remember we talked about the oneness. You stand in front of a tree. You know there's life energy flowing. And when you engage with that tree or the plant as I am oneness, you're engaging with the unseen life energy that you can then begin to sense. So contemplate life. Contemplate the tree and ask yourself, why is it alive? This is deep thought. This is intellectual thought. But it frames your thought for linkage. And if you practice, for example, the meditation of oneness we did last class, that you are the life that actually flows through everything, and then that life force is your creator. It is eternal. So if your linkage word is life, or life force, or eternal, or eternity, or ever living. You start shaping your contemplation that way. The last one I'll share with you, and there's so many more which you can come up with yourself, but the Creator is light. I'm just giving you all these examples of how I contemplate my source thought. The Creator is light. Then you think about light. What is light? And I think about light as the all-knowing. And when I contemplate knowledge, I contemplate light, I think of all the rays of the sun, which are not as bright as the sun, becoming brighter and brighter and brighter, and together they come together and make one light, one sun. And that's how I visualize, or that's how I begin to contemplate light. So if your linkage word is light, or all-knowing, or unity, then this sort of contemplation reverberates very well with your source thought. There's so many examples of linkage words and contemplations. And you can reflect and come up with your own contemplations. Read some key verses in the scriptures you follow. Read spiritual schools of thought. Contemplate them. Now, it doesn't mean that you only contemplate one source thought. Like I know I'll sit down and contemplate 4 or 5. Some of the ones I shared with you, I actually contemplate them regularly. Because as I think about these different attributes of my source, it grounds me. It builds my foundation for when I put that word before me in timelessness and I flow towards it. So preparing that meditation, preparing for meditation, that contemplation is extremely, extremely important. This week, take your time and come up with some more options. And if you want me to share some more, type in, in this webinar that you wish me to share some more. Then next week I'll share a few more. But in the meantime, I want you to come up with your own. I want you to contemplate yourself, different attributes of your Creator. There are so many. They're countless. Pick the ones that resonate with you and contemplate them. And at least contemplate 3 or 4 or 5 in that 10 minutes of source contemplation. So before you start meditation, the spiritual meditation, even before you go into stillness and preparing yourself, take 10 minutes before that for source contemplation. Don't dive directly into meditation. Because if you rush and you say, okay, my time is at 4 a.m., I'm sitting down, I'm going to engage with the word, it's going to be very difficult. Maybe, some of us have those supreme capabilities where we can lock into the word straight away, but most of us can't. We need time. We need to prepare. We need to contemplate. We need to frame that thought. Remember, thought is power. Frame it properly. Link it to your word. So this is a journey to be walked on during source contemplation, not jumped. So take your time, prepare. And then, remember, this process of framing and contemplating your thought is very, very important, because think of it as the foundation of your meditation. Think of your source thought like the canvas of a painting. If you close your eyes for a moment and imagine that there is a white canvas, that is your source thought. That is the background. And on it you write your source thought. So now what do you see? You see the canvas, and you see the word, the linkage word, standing out beautifully against the canvas. Those two go together. And that's how you have to think of linkage. It's the source thought, which is really to do with attributes of your Creator and the one that you're focusing on, and the word. When the word and the meaning come together, it is unstoppable, especially when you get to that spiritual present in timelessness. You are going to flow beautifully. You are going to flow very peacefully. So you can open your eyes. And now many people may say that I find it hard to focus on the word and its meaning at the same time. Then it's okay. You do your contemplation, frame your thought, and when you go into linkage, start with the word. And repeat the word slowly. And after a few repetitions, pause, bring in the meaning. Think of the meaning. Then go back to the word. Then go back to the meaning. And you can keep alternating until you reach a point where both of them come together, and then each time you recite the word, its meaning is flowing with you. Now that can take you some time. Take your time. There's no rush. And when you're going through that word, when you're focusing on the word, and you find it's an effort to merge the meaning, don't. Just focus on the word itself. But you already contemplated it, so the energy of that source thought is with you. And finally, the canvas and the word come together, I assure you, when you practiced. And then it's just a smooth flowing journey from there. Now, let's talk a little bit about the word itself before we do the meditation. The linkage word must flow in your mind effortlessly. So you cannot repeat it with rigidity. It must be like water. It should flow. Your word must flow. So you create a rhythm of repeating the word in slow and in easy parts. And you will ultimately begin to hear the word in your mind rather than utter it from your tongue. Your goal is to get it to hear it in your mind. It's your mind that's reciting it, and at some point your higher self will be reciting it to you and you will be listening. So it must be something very soft, fluid, and soothing. So when you have, for example, origin, you can go O, Re, Jin. That flows nicely, slowly. Universe, universe. Or Krishna. Or Allah. It just smoothly goes. Or if it's unity, it's unity. Let it flow. If it's a short word like Om, then stretch the word Om. Go like Om until a point you are comfortable. And you will find your own rhythm. So if you find yourself struggling to get the word right, then you are being too rigid. Take your time, work with your rhythm, and you can do all this before you start your meditation. Once you finish your contemplation, source contemplation, the 10 minutes, practice the word. And then you go into your main meditation. So I'm sorry that today I could not take any questions, but I promise you, once you send them in, we will answer them. Last week's have been answered as well, and you'll all be getting emails with your answers. They've been posted in the Meditation Masterclass Facebook group as well. So please, by all means, ask the questions. And maybe what we may do is the questions that are really very deep and insightful that impact everybody, when we start next class, I will pick those up and we will talk about them. But I really apologize. But I wanted to get this message across to you, leaving very little doubt in your mind on how it should be practiced. Now, it will only get better with practice. It'll only get better with that solid belief in that word. And it'll get better with immense amount of contemplation to frame your source thought. So with that, I'd like you all to now sit back. Please dim your lights, sit comfortably. This meditation is different, again, to the ones we practiced before, of going from stillness to detachment to oneness. This one is slightly different, but this one is going to focus totally on linkage. And when we come into that point of linkage, I'm going to give you enough time today to stay in that spiritual present and repeat the word. And then you go back and keep practicing. So sit back, relax, and breathe freely. You may close your eyes and breathe freely. Let go of all your worries, your thoughts, your emotions. Be completely at peace. Completely at peace. I'd like you to imagine that you're standing in front of a beautiful lake. You've been to this lake many times before. We're back there again. The sun is shining, the sky is blue. There's snow-capped mountains in the distance. The air is very fresh. This is nature at its best. Look at the lake, look at the water. And breathe freely. It is such a blessing to be in such a beautiful, pristine place. And then you walk into the lake and keep walking until the water reaches your knees. And you look down at the water and you see that it has small ripples. It is slightly choppy. But you want to see the reflection of your face in the water. So you want to make the water go still. So you look at the water and keep repeating in your mind, stillness, stillness, stillness. You want to make the water go completely still. Stillness. 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 And the water is slowing down, slowing down, slowing down. Until it is now completely still. Completely still. And you can see the reflection on your face in the water. Beautiful, perfect reflection. Stillness. 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 The water is completely still. You are completely still. And then you keep walking into the lake. The lake is now just like a still mirror. You keep walking in the lake until the water reaches your shoulders. And now all you can see is the sparkling rays of the sun bouncing off the water. All that is around you is just the sparkling light of the rays bouncing off the water. If you look in front of you, there is light. Pure, loving light. You look at the light and you repeat, light, light, light. This is the light of creation that is surrounding you, that is flowing within you. This is the light of life. You're surrounded by it. It's reaching every cell in your being. Light, light, light. And in the presence of the light, you repeat the word oneness. 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 You are one with everything. You're one with the light. You're one with the lake. The lake has become you. Oneness. 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 Keep repeating this word quietly in your mind. Oneness. 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 And all you can see before you is light, pure, loving, warm light. You are in complete oneness. And then in the light before you, you see a rose, a beautiful white rose. This is the rose of timelessness. And you step onto the rose, and each petal has the linkage word you have chosen, the name of your source. The white petals are also glowing with light. You're standing on this rose in the light, and you repeat in your mind the word timeless. 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 Time has stopped. Timeless. 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 And now each petal of the rose, which has got the word you have chosen written on it, begins to close all around you like a bud. And you are now surrounded by your linkage word. You're surrounded by light. You are timeless. And in the presence of this light, in pure timelessness, you begin to repeat your linkage word. I will use origin. You will use whatever word you have chosen. Origin. 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 Time has stopped. You're in oneness, pure light. And now you continue to repeat your linkage word in slow rhythm. And take your time. You are in the middle of this timeless rose, surrounded by light, surrounded by your linkage word. As you recite it, it flows through every cell of your being. Your whole being is reverberating your linkage word in timelessness. And then the petals of the rose begin to open. And you're back, having shared moments in the absence of time, purely immersed in light, purely immersed in your linkage word with your source thought. You may open your eyes whenever you're ready. Oh, that was beautiful. We have a very beautiful group we are meditating with, because all I could see was light. All I could feel was light. All our light came together as one. This is the beauty of being present at the class, where we share each other's light to just keep advancing and flowing. So please practice this meditation regularly. And I'm sure many of you will have questions. Send us your questions. And hopefully, during the course of the week, we will keep sending you responses. First thing tomorrow, we will send you the meditation of the Pearl with Arif Ismail's interview. And I hope that will help you a great deal. And then we'll get the recordings of this class. And next class, we are going to go deeper into the 10 stages of the soul, 10 stages of the spiritual journey. And I'll explain each of the stages to you, and you'll see how, working with your linkage word, you can rise from stage to stage to stage. And it's a very beautiful journey. So please do be present. Many of you have registered, many of you have come, but your friends and family, I think next week may be one of the last meditation masterclasses, or maybe there's one more. So please do be present. I'd like to wish you all stay safe, stay blessed. May all your difficulties be eased. May you always live under the umbrella of the light of the Creator. May you find true fulfillment in your spiritual journey, in your spiritual search. And may you experience happiness in every moment of your life. So stay blessed, and next week, look forward to being with you all again. Eid Mubarak.
Question is, can you explain the difference between subconscious, conscious, and unconscious states, and give examples that will help us to understand better?
Okay. Well, as you all know, we have the mind has 3 stages. One is your low-level mind. The other is your higher-level mind. The third is your intellect. And we have discussed this in great detail in previous classes. So I would define the conscious mind as being the 3 levels, which is lower level, higher level, and intellect. Now, when we go to subconscious, then this is a level that we are not aware of. But there's information, there's thoughts, there's knowledge sitting in the subconscious. And the subconscious often feeds us these ideas, impulses, visions. Sometimes when we're sleeping and we get dreams that make absolutely no sense. But if you go back and piece the movies you've seen in the last few days, you're going to see a few scenes patched together. The subconscious mind is awake when your conscious mind is asleep, and it does communicate with you. Now, unconscious is obviously when there's absolutely no consciousness. And that, I think, has two stages. Number one, if you're in a state of coma, you're unconscious. Another stage is where you have gone so deep into meditation that you have left all material consciousness behind. Then that, I wouldn't call it unconscious, because I would call that superconscious. But it does not resemble the material level consciousness that we are all accustomed to. So, these are the different classifications. Although I feel from a perspective of meditation, the best thing is to keep focusing, to keep bringing yourself into the present, and keep engaging higher. Whatever levels you cross is not important. It's important that you do progress. It is important that you do go towards your goal. So that's how I would put it.
Okay, thank you very much for that insight. Next question brings a chuckle to my face, actually, because this happens to me often. Any significance of flying like Superman in sleep?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, my grandson is really high on superheroes. So it'd be a good friend of yours if you knew you did that in your sleep. But I think, again, when you're going to sleep, many things happen. Your conscious level mind is shutting down, and you're going into that deep state of rest and sleep. Sometimes there is resistance from your conscious level mind, which can be perceived in many ways. Either it'll wake you up and you can't sleep, or you'll experience feelings of these different types, and it varies with people. And I think the other is when you're going into deeper sleep and you are shifting into an altered state of consciousness. And there again, you can experience that fast move into, usually it shouldn't happen. Usually you would just transition and it's a seamless process. But clearly in this particular person's experience, that process is not seamless. So he or she is feeling that let's call it that intersection far more than the rest of us do. But I don't think it has any profound spiritual interpretations, at least from my perspective.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Another question here is there a way of completing this technique by phone, conference, teleconferencing, or during face-to-face online meetings?
I think that the techniques we are sharing, I mean, really the best situation is to be physically present in the class. Because those of you who've attended the class will know that when a group of our size and like-minded souls all come together and meditate, the energy is just amazing. Every time I finish a meditation with this group, I feel so much at peace because we are all bringing our light and all bringing our energy into that one space. Now, if you cannot be present, but you still want to learn and experience, then we do produce the recordings. So you could listen to the recordings. But trying to do it over the phone one-on-one is not going to make that much of a difference. So I would just encourage you to listen to the meditations, practice them, keep revisiting them. there's something very special about going back to a technique and perfecting it in the way you practice it.
Great. Thank you for that. And I just want to concur on that. For all of you that register, I know a lot of people register for the webinars, but because it's going to be recorded, they don't turn up, or they turn up and leave early before it's concluded. For you guys, thank you so much for coming on and staying throughout. We do need everybody coming on. So if you register for the webinar, do make an effort to commit to that hour, 60 minutes or so that we are going to be on for. Because like Amyn just said, there's a difference in energy when we all come together and we meditate together versus just listening to the audio afterwards. Right. I think we might have a couple more questions. We've got 3 minutes here. There is another question that says, what are the other purposes of life?
Well, I think that I have actually covered this subject in a lot of detail in one of my audio CD collections, which is called Exploring Limitless Horizons. And
yes.
there I cover the 10 horizons that come together make up the purpose. Of course, one of the anchors is oneness, which we covered in last week's class. But what we're going to do is, after today's class, all the people who have registered their email addresses with us, we will email the link on the Exploring Limitless Horizons. And so they can listen to it in their own time. This was a lecture tour. It's too long an answer to give in this short period. But, I did a lecture tour on that globally when we first came out with Exploring Limitless Horizons. And there's a lot of food for thought there. So we will forward the links in tomorrow's email. And we hope you can take your time and enjoy it.
I definitely concur. That is a phenomenal one to listen to. I've listened to that so many times. I've actually, with your blessing, I've actually transcribed the whole entire audio. It took me a whole entire day to actually do so. So yes, there's a lot of food for thought there. One that you must definitely listen to 100%. Final question here. It says, how can you avoid being affected by adversity and negativity of others while you are being one with everybody around you?
That's a very good question. And I think one of the important things for us to understand is we live in a reality of duels. What do I mean by that? You've got light and you've got darkness, and they coexist together. Now, of course, when you go into oneness, you are going into light. And light can dispel darkness very quickly. You can have a pitch dark room, and I just light a small candle, and the whole room will come alive. But you cannot pierce light with darkness. It just doesn't happen. So I think that when you are creating that space of oneness, what you're doing when someone comes in your space is they are experiencing your energy. Now, they may have negative energy. They may be having issues or challenges or whatever it is of their own. But you're creating such a conducive space around you that they're coming in feeling happier. And it's not an exchange where you're going to take their energy and you're creating yours because you're defining your state of being. And they're coming in your space. So it's very difficult to imagine how darkness can pierce through light. Now, in my experience, every time I have come across people who are actually in a very negative state, I sense them. But that's the time I put more energy in my space because I want to reach out to them. I want to help them. I want that interaction to be positive. So you're the driver here. You drive your space. You control your space. And if you come across negativity, you'll be inspired to add more energy and more positivity in your own space.
I love that answer. How do we relate to the COVID virus? Can we embrace it in oneness?
Okay, that's a very interesting question. First of all, the virus is not something that has life. It's basically a cell, not even a cell. It's an entity that is coated with fat, and it's a non-living. The reason you can't kill a virus that easily as you do bacteria is because it's not living. And I think when you embrace oneness and you are aware of the presence of this virus and what it is doing, I think when you embrace oneness within you, it should invoke that compassion of healing. Healing for yourself, healing for all those who may be afflicted by it. So I think that it's an inanimate object, it's present, its impact you're aware of, and I think that the natural invocation that comes to you flowing through that source of life is one of healing. And so that's how I would approach it.